so low on energy after lunch. Ajeet has a tough task now. He's got to ensure that all of you are awake during the talk. Okay, so we move on. You heard Dr. Dror earlier speaking on healthcare for the poor and how healthcare is actually kind of making a lot of people from the lower class, lower middle class, become poor because they have no access to healthcare. You heard before that about how we need to transform India by reinventing leadership. Compelling talk done by Mr. Ravi Chaudhary. And I was very happy to note that during lunch, there were various people who were kind of networking with each other and living the spirit of the fellowship. And was happy with what Karthikeya told me, that several people have actually asked him to come and work with them on the issue of autism. So I'm happy to see that the fellowship is working. So please do connect and see how we can all work together to make a difference in society. For years now, we launched the Joy of Giving in 2003. So it's going to be 10 years since the time we launched that concept in India. And it's become a very big movement now. But along with the Joy of Giving, and one of the reasons to move from the Joy of Giving to Right Every Wrong was because I felt that most people talk about doing a little charity. And then that's why we thought about this entire foundational, slogan that we created. It's not mindless, arrogant charity, but humble, involved social justice that is wanting in our world. And the reason I say that is because most people talk about how they have given a little money to some charity because it looks fashionable and they get a tax benefit, but they don't really look into what's happening with that money. And the whole concept of Right Every Wrong is to go beyond the joy of giving and say, how do we get involved in the process of change? How can we trigger the process of change? How can we do something on our own which kind of helps causes? Our next speaker is a gentleman who lives this entire ethos, and his name is Ajeet Bajaj, an adventurer by heart and the MD of Snow Leopard Adventure Private Limited. He's going to speak to you about skiing across the Greenland, and he's done this with his daughter to raise funds for a cause. And he actually kind of looks into the project and is very involved with the project to ensure that there's sustainability for the project. And that exactly is what we mean by social justice vis-a-vis charity. So, may I call upon Mr. Ajeet Bajaj to please come up.
Thanks, Jerry. Good afternoon. I'm going to do my very best to keep all of you awake this afternoon. So, can we have the lights switched off, please?
Yeah, just some housekeeping. At 9 minutes, I give you the bell. At 12 minutes, I give you the whistle. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take you on a journey with me to Greenland. 2 expeditions. But I'd like to begin by saying that when I was in school at the Lawrence School, Sanaa, I had read about these famous polar explorers, Captain Scott, Amundsen, Nansen, Shackleton, and it was a childhood dream to one day try and follow in their very illustrious footsteps. This quest for adventure took me skiing to the geographical North Pole, to the geographical South Pole, and across Greenland. This, incidentally, is 90 degrees north latitude, the geographical North Pole. The first expedition to Greenland was a sea kayaking expedition, and I'm going to rush through some of these slides. This is a place called Ilulissat. As you know, Greenland is actually a misnomer. Most of Greenland is ice, and it's the world's largest island, but it has a population of only 55,000 people. Our first expedition was a sea kayaking expedition. Kayaking is an integral part of the Inuit culture, and we were dropped off by a boat and then a helicopter to the starting point of our expedition. And for the next 18 days, we kayaked along the fjords of West Greenland. We carried pretty much everything with us on the kayaks: our food, our sleeping bags, tents, in waterproof chambers on the kayaks. Greenland, the reason I'm showing you some of these slides is because Greenland is considered ground zero for the climate crisis. It's all happening there over the past 2 decades. the Arctic regions have warmed up by about 2 degrees Celsius, and that's caused a huge difference. I know Carmen is going to be talking about it a little bit later this afternoon, but we saw a lot of signs and symptoms of this firsthand for ourselves. As you can see, these glaciers, you can see the terminal and the lateral moraine, they are shrinking. We had, this is the other form of kayaking, whitewater kayaking. But because of this increase in temperature, the number of mosquitoes now breed in wild profusion. And when we got to camp after about 8 hours of kayaking on a typical day, we had to wear nets, mosquito nets around our faces and gloves. Otherwise, we'd get eaten alive. As these are NASA satellite photos taken on the same day, and in these 26 years, the Arctic ice cap has shrunk by about 20%, not only in extent that you can see on this slide, but also in thickness. And it's really because of the huge amounts of greenhouse gases, especially carbon emissions, to the tune of 31.6 gigatons every year, which is causing this. That, incidentally, is an Eskimo roll, but when you do an Eskimo roll, that's you upright a kayak through a series of coordinated maneuvers upside down underwater. When you come up in these very frigid waters, your brain goes completely numb and gets you to do some very crazy things like swimming out to the icebergs. Well, to cut a long story short, on this first expedition I was joined by my daughter Deeya, who was then 14. And we flew over the Greenland ice cap, and we decided that that was something we wanted to do. Last year in May, we were given the national flag. You can see Mr. Mark Parkinson there as well. And off we went. As we were flying across Greenland from Denmark, I must admit, that was a moment of truth for me. I cursed myself. I called myself a complete idiot because nobody that young. My daughter Deeya was 17 then, and while she's extremely fit, swims at a national level, is a taekwondo black belt and so on, and is a great skier, but she was the youngest person attempting to ski about 600 kilometers from the west to the east coast of Greenland with an ambient temperature of minus 23. The temperature dropped to about minus 45 with the wind chill on our expedition. We reached, so we skied just past the Arctic Circle from the west to the east coast of Greenland. Did buy her a lot of chocolate, and that was in some ways trying to make up for my guilt of having her along. The other thing, of course, was that we went from Delhi in May, which was plus 42 degrees Celsius, to minus 23 degrees in about 34 hours, you know. But the human body is amazing as to how quickly it can adapt. We landed on the west, the west portion of the Greenland ice cap, and it took us 20 days to ski across. We had a team of 16 members supported by 2 Inuit and 28 Greenlandic Huskies and 2 sleds. So that's our team. So when you ski during the Arctic summer, even on an expedition to the North Pole, you have the sun very low on the horizon. There's no warmth to it, but it's there for 24 hours of the day. But psychologically, when the sun is out, it's a great feeling. So typically, we would ski for about 30 kilometers. That would take us about 8 to 10 hours. Every 2 hours, we take a minute's break. About a 3 to 4 minute break. I used to call those breaks necessary evils because each time you stop and you start going, your hands and your feet get really, really cold, and it takes a long time to warm up. So I'd like to share with you the secret formula for success on some of these expeditions. I like to call it PODS, where P stands for preparation, I think pretty obvious. O is for being organized all the times, not just thinking where you are, but always looking a few steps ahead, few days, few months ahead. Planning in this case also entails months and months of physical training, your gear, logistics and so on. D is for being deliberate. Every action, you got to be very, very careful because it can have some very, very real consequences, not only for you, but also for your team. Deliberate not only in what you do, but also what you say. Because whatever you say can, in these kind of conditions, I believe, in a fridge where you make ice, the temperature is -5 degrees. So when it's -23 as the ambient temperature, if you say something which is not so appropriate, it can immediately plummet the morale of your team. So you have to live on a very, very high energy, high positive energy plane on these expeditions. And S is for being super safe. Yeah. We were lucky. The first few days didn't really think we'll make it. We had storms, we had blizzards, with visibility dropping to about 1 meter or 2 meters. We were using GPS's, global positioning systems, to navigate. But again, I mean, sometimes the wind would be so strong that I remember it even knocked off Deeya, lifted her off her feet and she fell. And quite honestly, in the beginning, I thought, what are we doing here? You know, I don't think we're going to be able to make it. And rescue in these, when you get onto these expeditions, we have a term, the politer version of which is AMF yo-yo, which stands for adios, my friend, you're on your own. So when you get out on the ice, you're pretty much on your own. And things like rescue, while it can happen, can be extremely difficult, especially if the wind conditions are over 20 knots or if there is a blizzard. That's during a break. And we had these 2 sleds with 14 huskies each that carried our gear. These huskies are amazing. They pull the sleds the whole day. They get just a mugful of food every day, end of the day. And they sleep out on the Arctic ice through very, very cold conditions. They just cover their nose with their tail. That's my husky in the polar sleeping system. That's Deeya. The one thing we didn't do is we did not give up. We skied every day. Last year, I was told there were about 18 expeditions that attempted to ski across Greenland, and only 5 of us actually succeeded. As I said, I think to my mind, the most important factor for success on these expeditions is a very positive attitude and a never say die attitude. We had 2 Inuit with us, Ulrich and Salu. While we didn't speak any of their language and they didn't speak any English, but again, I guess we forged a very, very strong friendship. I think the language of adventure has a way of communicating. About 8 days into the expedition, you know, we went right into a James Bond movie. We saw this big white dome, which was a part of the distant early warning system during the Cold War. So there were these radars that the Americans had built right on the Greenland ice cap, just to warn them in case the Soviets decided to send a nuclear-tipped missile their way. So we actually went right into one of these establishments. We could see the radar, and it had just been abandoned and left the way it was after the Cold War. After 20 days of skiing, we actually came all the way to the east coast, where we saw a bit of land once again. Of course, we had to descend down some very steep slopes that had a lot of crevasses, but we did come down. That's a crevasse, what you see there. Some of them can be covered as well, so you have to be extremely careful. That's our team at the very end of the expedition. And that's on taking a boat to a small Inuit village called Aesop. But I'd just like to take a minute here and talk about, what you can't see here is polar bear puff marks on the left side of the boat. And apparently there was a polar bear that went too close to Aesop and was shot dead by the Inuit. And sadly, I think the time has now come for us to rethink the way we humans are living life on this planet. There's a lot of endangered species, and I think it's about time we started doing something about it. The tiger is a prime example, but not just the tiger. There's many birds. There are many other species like the snow leopard, for instance, that are on the verge of extinction. That was a very proud moment, planting the national flag on the east coast of Greenland. As I said, we were the first Indians attempting to do this. Deeya became the youngest person on the planet to have achieved this. I completed my polar trilogy. Again, on a very personal note, I'd like to share with you that just before, about a year before we went for this expedition, I've been blessed. I have 2 daughters. And I think that's the best thing that has happened to me in my life. I took them to a boys' orphanage. Well, it's technically not an orphanage. These boys who were there, they're children, people who have leprosy. And with the huge social stigma attached to leprosy in India, their fate is actually worse than that of orphans in most cases. When I took them to this orphanage after an adventure trip up in the mountains, to sensitize them, they asked me, "Dad, how come there are no girls here?" I really didn't have an answer. And perhaps the best bit of our mission across Greenland, what was most satisfying and rewarding for us was that as part of our mission, we hope to raise enough funds to get 12 girls to join this orphanage. And last year, we were in August, it was a dream come true when finally we got these 11 very wonderful, beautiful girls as part of this orphanage. Our plan now is that by 2015, we want to call it Mission 100 Smiles, and we plan to have a building and to get 100 girls to join this ashram. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Let us have a big hand for Ajeet Bajaj, the man walking the talk, and of course skiing the talk also. So great, I mean, you already got a lot of girls into the mission, and I see that there's a sustainability built into it. Yeah. Perfect. I saw a proud moment happening. My wife happens to be from Sanar also, so she was waving out to me when you said that you're from Sanar. So, questions for Ajeet, please.
Brilliant, absolutely. I had almost my eyes moistened by the last thing which you mentioned. But on another note, where did this idea germinated that you wanted to ski as an instrument for funding? And if you can tell us a bit about all of us, that how it all finally took the shape, because we got to know the journey, but what conspired into it is something you can share with us.
So as I mentioned, I had taken my girls on a whitewater kayaking trip down the Ganga. And after that, I took them to this orphanage. And when they asked me why there were no girls there, I didn't really have an answer. It did stir up something inside all of us, And the next year, when we decided that we were going to ski across Greenland, and I think I'm grateful to Mr. Mark Parkinson, the Sri Ram School, because Deeya was a student of the Sri Ram School, and they supported us. When Deeya and I thought of this idea that, look, let's go ahead and raise some money, let's raise a bit of awareness for this cause as well. And, Deeya is a prime example. I mean, I just don't say this just because I'm a very proud father, but, dreaming and then working very hard to make those dreams come true. So, when we decided that we were going to ski across Greenland, we decided to to make that as our prime cause. And we've had these girls for over a year now, and there are 2 mothers or matrons who are there looking after them. And we've already been able to raise some funds. The land is there to start a building and slowly start getting more and more girls in. And as I mentioned, by 2015, we hope to have 100 girls.
So, different ways to change the world. We have amongst us a very renowned global philanthropist, Michael Norton, who has written a book called 365 Ways to Change the World. Simple ideas about how people can become the change they want to see in the world. Michael's right up there. Michael, yes. So please read the book. You can buy it at any of the bookstores. But he's going to speak a little later. Yes. Yeah. Any more questions for Ajeet?
Thank you. My name is Pankaj, and you told us about all this, getting the fund for this trip. So I really want to know how you approach to XYZ entity or the corporate for fund, and how difficult it was to raise a fund for this trip. Thank you.
As I said, Deeya school, the Shriram school, they pitched right in when we told them that Deeya was going to be missing school for a while. But not only were we going to ski across Greenland, but we wanted to raise funds to also have these girls as a part of, to start a girls' wing at the orphanage. The school was very supportive, and I believe if you have a good idea and a pure idea, and you have the courage of conviction, things happen. And I think we had so many friends and family that came on board and supported us that we have enough, at least for these 12 girls, we have enough to look after them for the next 6 years.
One last question.
Well, I am Sagar, and I would like to ask you that what is your educational background? Because you have taken a very bold step, and you have been a successful. As you said that there have been 15 expeditions and 18 expeditions and 5 have been successful. And after the expedition, when it is a successful, what do you think about yourself? And how can you mentor other people for these same events? Thank you.
Yes, as I mentioned, I think there's sometimes, I can also tell you, on my expeditions, for instance, to the North Pole or the South Pole, there's a very fine line between success and failure. And most of it is in there. It's your attitude that can take you all the way. My educational background is, I went to a boarding school up in the mountains, the Lawrence School, Sanam. That's where I got into adventure sports, mountaineering and so on. And then I was at St. Stephen's College, where again, I got into adventure sports in a big, big way. And after college, I decided to pursue my hobby and make it into a profession. And I'm extremely lucky that I have my hobby, my passion, my profession. It's exactly the same, which is adventure. A huge amount of personal satisfaction, more so because, if you can think of something and then work hard, face the challenges that are thrown your way, and there's plenty of those, but grit and determination, and then, success makes you more, in these kind of situations, a lot more at peace with yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Neeraj, you had a question to ask? Maybe have a microphone for Neeraj, please. One last question.
Hi, the name is Neeraj. Quick question for you is, how much were you able to raise for these kids through the exhibition?
So we raised about 6 lakhs. And but now that we are going to start this building, we've gotten a short commitment of about 10. We need 40 over the next 2 years, but I'm confident we'll make it happen.
Okay, and this expedition that you did was specifically for this, for helping these kids out?
Well, it became a major part of our mission. We did it for the adventure, but we had thought of something that we wanted to see take shape, and we were able to club the two together.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. So that was skiing across the Greenlands with Ajeet Bajaj. Thank you so much.